Welcome to the Political Matrix News. Politics, people, local, regional, national news. Political Matrix News keeps you informed. We have the sources, we have the truth from inside the political matrix.
And we are back. I'm Greg Fink here with the Political Matrix News broadcast, and we got Scott Miller over there with his wonderful handlebar. It looks like Captain Days.
Wow.
Ready for some rum. Anyway, I think we have a new poll out here. It's being done by Cherry Communications in the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Rick Scott is 15 points ahead of his Democrat opponent for the general election. What do you think about that?
Well, usually this far out, I'm not, very locked into what the poll's going to say, because anything can happen. There's a long road between here and now. And also, far more often than not, pollsters that are publishing polls at this point in the election aren't really, spending the money for the good results. They're just throwing something out there with the cheapest data set they can find, which is usually either adults or registered voters. But I looked at this one and it seems to have a good methodology. It's not that you can't, taint a poll or influence a poll with how you ask the questions or what questions that you ask. But from what I can see in this one, without seeing the questions in the rest of the survey, it looks good to me. They're asking for likely voters, people who have a history of voting. So right. What they tell you they're planning on doing is relevant because they actually show up. And the blend of Democrats versus Republicans is 223 Democrats, 256 Republicans, and 130 of others. And that's a good mix. It's a good blend, and it's right. Well representative of the state. So, do I believe this poll? I think it's a pretty good indicator of where Senator Scott stands right now. But there's a lot of time between now and the election. But he has a good history and hasn't had a lot of really controversy with the voters. So I like the poll. I think it's a good poll.
Right.
We'll see how things roll going forward.
That's very true. I think it's going to say a lot. I mean, he has had a history of close elections, but he is enjoying a very comfortable lead right now. And Cherry Communications, we do a lot of polling as well. Our company, the listener group of the Political Matrix, we do a lot of live operator polling as well as text polling. And Cherry Communications is also one of the other leaders in the field out there, and they are very good at their methodology. And so I'm very happy to see that they came out with this type of result. I guess he's running against Debbie Picasso Powell, who I guess she's out of South Florida. She's a Congress member out of South Florida. And so, it's interesting that Democrats are using people who do not have a lot of statewide name ID to run against a statewide incumbent candidate for Senate who's been there quite a while, as well as a two-term governor. But hey, I'm not the one that picked the candidates here for the Democrat Party. I'm just the one here watching the show. And I think the show is going to end up with Rick Scott doing very, very good on this campaign. We also have Michael Johnson.
Well, at the end of the day, the man has won like 4 statewide elections. So he's going to be really hard to beat. I do want to say one thing though, and this is something that is going to be valuable for people as we're going forward in this election. When you see these polls, make sure you read that bottom line in there that talks about who they asked, because the farther you get from likely voters, the next step down is registered voters, and then the step after that, right, farthest down is adults. The farther you get from likely voters, the more to the left you skew your poll, and there's volumes of research that show that, and the more I've seen them results skewed as much as 15% by a poll that uses that calls the wrong people.
Right.
So so make sure you look at how big the set is. For a statewide race, 700, 1,000 people. That's a pretty solid.
Right, it's a pretty solid number.
but more than anything is, you've got to look at the blend of Democrats to Republicans, depending on if it's a general election. If it's not, then you don't care what the party affiliation is. But you want likely voters.
Right.
If you're not looking at likely voters, you're just looking at a poll for entertainment or a poll for fundraising, because it has nothing to do with reality.
You want to make sure everything is weighted perfectly, and also the way you ask the questions, the way they're asking them. You want to make sure you're not leading them or giving them a loaded question. You want to make sure all the questions are extremely balanced and extremely objective. If you start leading them, then basically you can go ahead and throw the scientific aspect of the entire survey out the window and shred it, because you're basically just going ahead and trying to get the answer that your client or somebody else who is pushing you to do that is willing to get. And that's really not, fair to the campaign, or is it fair to the people who you're trying to honestly tell where the status of the election is. That's kind of, we've been doing surveys ourselves for, I guess, 26 years, 27 years.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And our accuracy is like beyond. I mean, we had outside the margin of error, 3? Like 700 or 800?
Like that, yeah.
I mean, and that's.
And you never know.
One was my father. And so, so.
Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It just happened.
I mean, a lot of times also when you're too close to a campaign, you can really taint the survey as well. And so, I mean, because you put your subjectivity into it, and you put all the way you ask the questions. So it's always very important to make sure who's ever's doing the scripting and everything else is extremely objective and everything. And that's the reason why you need to look at these surveys. When you look at the surveys, ask, look at how they're asking the questions. I think Kellyanne Conway was on Bill Maher this weekend. She's saying that the people who are asking the best questions right now is NBC. NBC seems to be asking very, very good, solid questions about, exactly, definitively, how do you feel about these issues, instead of giving a whole bunch of wiggle room. And because the more wiggle room they give you, the more the poll is just a entertaining poll or a media poll.
Yeah,
and it's nothing to do with any kind of strategy or any kind of reality whatsoever. And so, I mean, that being said,
more often than not, the polls that are released for public consumption are generally skewed in some way and are there for a particular effect. Right. People often don't get to see, honest to God, I think the reason our public polls are so accurate is because most people aren't publishing. It's not that no one else is capable of generating accurate results. It's just that their clients want them to do something as a promotional thing, and they're not looking for accurate things. They want to hear what the actual campaign wants to say.
And we're the clients in our promotional polls, and our what we're trying to push is the truth. We're not trying to push any kind of agendas. We're not trying to push any kind of alternative universe ideas. We just want to push exactly what's out there, because I mean, it doesn't help anybody. I mean, if I like somebody who's behind, it doesn't help them to have any kind of false promise that they're way ahead, and vice versa. If somebody's way ahead, it doesn't really give them any idea to let them know they're way behind. I mean, the whole idea is to let everybody know the truth and to make sure that the information that you're getting when you do these surveys is correct and not just something that somebody wants to go ahead and play with.
Right.
Because there's too many people out there. We got called all kinds of names last year because we were off on the Charlie Crist and Ron DeSantis poll. But I think everybody was off on that poll. I don't think anybody on the planet predicted DeSantis winning by 19 points. In fact, I think the closest poll had him winning by 15 points. And we were third closest. We had, at the end of the day, we did have Charlie ahead during a lot of the survey, but, we can't guarantee turnout. Because at the end of the day, we did do the survey on the very last day right before the election. And we had DeSantis winning by 9 points. And so, I mean, that's, that's still outside of the margin. But, we still had a winning, so, it still counted. But, I mean, the whole idea is that, people have to start looking at these surveys a lot more closely about who you're calling, like you said earlier. And I mean, there's going to be a plethora of surveys throughout the summertime, and people aren't going to be home. And so, I mean, it's a lot of your likely voters are going to be traveling, going to be off the radar. So you're going to have a lot of surveys done with non-likely voters, most likely. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how they change, because you'll see a big change in surveys between June, July, and August and September when everybody gets back. And so you'll see a big change at that time, because, still people are not willing to answer phones on their cell phones, surveys on their cell phones. So.
Well, I mean, there's so much spam calls going on these days. It's kind of hard to get anyone to pick up the phone for anything legitimate.
Correct. Okay, guys. Well, that's the enough here for this year break here real quick. We're going to take a real quick break, and we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about local politics here in Florida